Before I begin, let me get this out of the way. People have been focusing on the last part of what Matt says here, saying that this is Kojima's message to the players, but I say that the entirety of what Matt says here is the message. Take a look.
I'll show you the real thing soon. I promise.
Far from my own burning desire to know what Matt is showing the baby, this bit refers to the nature of the trailer itself and how obviously we'll soon, very soon, get to see the real deal.
The whole wide world will be yours to explore. You'll be able to go wherever you want. Even the moon.
I'll come back to this last bit at some point later in the video, but for now, hi there, my name's TrueNav, and today I want to talk about Death Stranding. Specifically, I aim to answer the question, what is Death Stranding about? To do so, I'm going to engage in a very comprehensive analysis of each and every one of the trailers Kojima Productions has released, including the logo video, with the hope of portraying what I believe to be the answer to that question. And when I say comprehensive, I mean I'm going to pick apart each trailer, one by one, leaving no stone unturned. But don't misinterpret me. Oh no, when I say pick apart, I don't mean it in a negative way. No, on the contrary, dear viewer, by that I mean that my eyes will comb through each video like a fine-toothed comb, find and connect every conceivable detail. I'll be looking into symbolism and question the meaning of almost everything. Also, my hope is to keep everything as organized as I can, because I'll be stopping on each potential point I see, jumping back and forth, so let's hope it all goes well. But before we get into the meat of things, I want to disclose a few things. Firstly, I'm not an expert in any scientific field, nor do I pretend to be. I'm no physicist or chemist or anything of the sort. I am just an overly analytical person with Google at their disposal. So if anything I mention sounds off, know that it is because of that, and feel free to correct me or add to the things I say. Secondly, this video will contain all of my speculation and theories regarding what the story of the game will be and how it might play. They're just my opinions and they are in no way representative of the truth, though one can hope a theory turns out to be correct. Thirdly, I know that not all footage shown in game trailers are necessarily shown in the final product, but Kojima has a reputation for including most of what he shows off in the actual games. So I'll be working off the basis that everything in the trailers will be in the game. And finally, the reason I decided to make this video was because I'm really excited for the game. I love Kojima's work. I love how cryptic he is with all the info that's been released, but also because after the latest trailer, I still see people saying that they don't understand what the game is about. Now at this point, I think it's just a meme to not understand, but it still irks me to see it, so I thought I'd clear up the doubts people have with my vision of what I think the game will be based on the trailers we've gotten. Because if there's one thing the release date trailer gave me, it was enough info to actually get a solid grasp of the plot. It was actually amazing to see how, with each watch of the trailer, the pieces just clicked, and after that they just kept on clicking. Be forewarned, you're going to hear me say a lot of maybes. Some of the things I'll say are in reference to what other people have already seen or pointed out, and I won't be including direct references to anyone or very many snippets of info, like for example from Kojima's Twitter, unless it's absolutely necessary. Other than that, I'll be working solely with the trailers and what little info has been divulged about the game. Now, with that extremely long and boring intro out of the way, let's dive right into the heart of Death Stranding. And to do so, I'll begin by asking the obvious question. What is Death Stranding? Well,
you see, I've come to understand the truth of the Death Stranding.
Right back at you, Troy. According to the official page, the description of the game is as follows. A journey to reconnect a fractured society. In the near future, mysterious explosions have rocked the planet, setting off a series of supernatural events known as the Death Stranding. With spectral creatures plaguing the landscape and the planet on the verge of a mass extinction, it's up to Sam Bridges to journey across the ravaged wasteland and save mankind from impending annihilation. So, the Death Stranding is an event, or rather a series of events that occur in the aftermath of those mysterious explosions. If we analyze the title itself, we can come up with a few instances of handy symbolism, one of which is a direct reference to the core theme of the game, as per Kojima when he first spoke about it, the stick and the rope. A strand can be considered any elongated string of material, a strand of hair, a strand of rope. To be stranded is to be isolated or expelled from any given area. And finally, when oceanic animals become beached, they're also known as stranded. In other words, Death Stranding can mean two things, and it means both things in this context. The first is that death is stranded on our side. And the second is that our side is connected to death through a strand. It's a beautifully symbolic play on words, and I eat this kind of thing up. Having established that, let's look at the first trailer. Ideally, I'll want to go through all of them. And I did think of starting this analysis video with the release date trailer, since that one helps explain all the others, but I had trouble finding a good starting point for this analysis, so I thought it'd be better to just go in order. That way, we'll slowly build up to a complete vision. We start off with the poem, or an excerpt from a poem by William Blake. It says, "To see a world in a grain of sand, and a heaven in a wild flower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour." I've been doing some reading up on this poem, and it turns out that this is easily the quote that, or rather the 4 verses that most stand out from his poem. And though there are many interpretations, what it tries to convey is that there is beauty in everything, from the smallest grain of sand to even a flower. And in a way, it speaks about our connection to God, or rather, to heaven. And this is in a way important because heaven is, in essence, paradise. And what does paradise mean for humans, or rather the human soul? That's right, it's a paradise for the dead. Now, it's not supposed to sound so dark in a way. Paradise is a good thing, of course, but this is probably one of the themes that came to mind when Kojima chose this particular part of the poem. A connection to the other side. This is the first indicative of that. By now, it's no surprise that many people have analyzed the trailers, and it's been a good 3 years since the first teaser trailer came out, and despite a lot of speculation, we now know that what causes the dead crabs in the first 2 trailers is the event called timefall, which is rain, which makes everything that the water droplets touch age. So fast, in fact, that they die, and in the case of plants, they are reborn, but in the case of animals, they just die. Enter the creepy handprints that as soon as they step, black water oozes from them. Enter naked Norman Reedus over here, with the handcuffs that immediately light up, signaling that he has come back to life or he's regained consciousness. What this means for the in-game, or as an in-game mechanic, is one of 2 things. The first is my theory that this is either an opening sequence to the game, just as it was for the presentation all those years ago, or it'll happen later on in the game as maybe one of Sam's fears, because honestly, this is just a very frightful situation. But either way, the handcuff turning on could be like a controller turning on, so that's why I think this is going to be part of the game and at the very beginning, just maybe as a nightmare sequence, who knows. And in this sequence, we see the handprints come up to the baby and come up to Norman. And as is present in later trailers, we now know that this is because they are attracted to sound, to probably vibrations, or, in a more creepy aesthetic, they are attracted to life. Next theory, or rather a continuation of what I said before, I think this might happen in the middle of the game because Norman, or rather Sam, makes a connection with the baby. Not just a physical, plug into the pod the baby's in, but maybe he starts to care for the baby to the point that, like any normal person would, they see this fragile thing lying on the ground and they think, okay, poor kid, I gotta protect him. Especially when you realize that the things that lurk on the other side are after the baby. What I'm trying to say is that I think that maybe this sequence is a nightmarish sequence where Norman fears for the life of the baby that's technically keeping him safe throughout the entire journey, throughout the entire game, from the... Actually, let's call them as they are, as was confirmed after the release date trailer. The BTs, the beached things, the things that walk on their hands, because that's what they're doing, right? They're leaving handprints because that's how they walk.
Lost and never found, waiting for my words, seen but never.
This moment right here is important, and it's another one where we have to put a pin in it to analyze it with the latest trailer a little later on. But for now, let's say that the baby disappearing means that it was probably either taken by the beach things to the other side, or it was never there. The fact that Norman's hands are covered in the black water is also an indication of, he was holding something that was alive and that suddenly vanished. It died. It literally crossed over.
But I'll keep coming.
The necklace, I know, by now it's been well divulged that these things have physics equations, quantum physics, and other things like that. I'm not going to go into that. There's other people have covered it, specifically the only other person I saw who covered it at the time, Ya. But let's just say that the equations there have to do with black holes, time travel, wormholes, and parallel dimensions and all that. So, well, actually, that last one is just me speculating. But that's what that has to do with, and I'm not going to touch them at all. The C-section scar is worth noting because even though we don't understand the full significance of it yet, my theory is that it has literally to do with the baby. Either the baby is or can be a personification of your essence born from your womb, or it's merely symbolic. But it comes into play later on as well, so for now let's just put another small pin in this one. Though it's not a big my own theory kind of pin. It's more of a, yes, this has something to do with something else. Also, handprints all over his body, very important to note. Here they don't really signify much, but again, another small pin to be connected with something else a little further on. Actually, right after this trailer. And I know, I hate the fact that I'm cutting into the song so much. It's a great song. But, okay, let's talk about this scene, right here. Going back to what I said a little earlier. Remember, Death Stranding. Beached whales. This is the first indicative of that direct symbolism, and also of what was later basically confirmed, or not yet, but totally confirmed by theories, that death is stranded on our side. Just not in the same way. Think of it like this. If a living thing, like a whale, gets stranded on a beach and dies, then it could be said that when death is stranded on the side of the living, it comes to life, which is why it's so rampant, which is why it became such a problem for the people in this situation, this post-apocalyptic situation they're in. Also worth noting, the 5 figures, whose significance we don't really know of yet, but they appear in practically all the trailers, and I have a small theory regarding them, so, once again, pin in that. And this is just the last thing I'm going to mention regarding this specific trailer, but the lyrics to Low Roar's song. Many thought of it as, you know, Kojima's comeback after the whole Konami debacle, but if you think about it, he always chooses songs that have to do sort of with the situation at hand or what he's presenting. In this case, I'll Keep Coming, it didn't make much sense, but after you see all the trailers, you realize, hey, there's a little bit here that does make sense. I'll Keep Coming is basically a message saying not to give up. Or, in the case of someone who is gone or who dies, they return, they come back, they don't give up even if they die. This is clearly a small nod, albeit at this time we didn't know it, to the fact that in Death Stranding, even though you'll die, you'll always be able to come back. There is no actual game over. And that's it for this trailer. On to the next one so we can start connecting some dots over here and over there. I'm not going to do them in order, or I don't think I will, not entirely, because we have to connect dots so we don't get too lost. I will get to the second trailer, but not yet.
Once there was an explosion, a bang which gave birth to time and space. Once there was an explosion, a bang which set a planet spinning in that space. Once there was an explosion, a bang which gave rise to life as we know it. And then came the next explosion.
Now, at this point is where I have to draw back to the description of the game on the official page. That next explosion, or rather the next series of explosions, are what gave way to the Death Stranding. The first three explosions he's talking about are the Big Bang, the Theia Impact, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and the Cambrian explosion. With the last one obviously being the probably titled Death Stranding explosion? I don't know, who knows? Now, the situation that Sam finds himself in at this point in time tells me that this is a mission gone wrong. It's pretty obvious given the context, as is soon visible. An overturned truck, there's been an accident, but you don't know when in time this happens. I'd like to think that this is shortly after starting the game, probably once you've gotten some good ground, you know, you've really done your job, and then it's like, whoops. This is the first moment that I think Sam realizes the extent or the true danger that is trying to mess with the other side. The body with the golden mask. Let's put a pin in this. Actually, there's like 3 pins to put in this, because we have to come back to this a little later. But for now, let's just say that the gold on his face seems to have melted, seems to have turned into some dust or something like that, and it's smeared all across the face instead of actually being a mask. And this will be important when I explain why in the last trailer.
They're here. I can't get you out!
As some people have pointed out already, the mechanical arm reacts to the creatures or to the beach things, and depending on its movement, it indicates proximity. This is going to come to gameplay later on as you maybe have to sneak through an area or avoid them altogether.
Sam!
Shut up. Don't even breathe.
Now it's kind of hard to make out in this particular frame, so I'm going to probably touch it up a bit, but you can see a silhouette in the fog. And that silhouette could easily be one of the 5 figures. Whether it is or not, it's up to debate, but let's put a small pin in here because these guys, whether they're the 5 figures or not, also appear later on.
Surrounded.
Enter Troy Baker's character, otherwise known as Higgs. Another small pin in him. Nothing much to say here except that his appearance coincides with what happens next. This is why I think this right here is the very first time we see him, as an enigmatic apparition that we don't really know who he is until, later on when he actually presents himself. Small pin here because this is also something very important, very integral to the actual story of the game. As this, or what's about to happen, I need to call back to it later. Actually, there's about 2 pins here as well because one of them is the explosion that happens here. The other is the opening of the hands, also very important. And the third is, well, again, the explosion, but what that actually means in terms of the story. Sam falls into an underwater world of sorts, which could easily be the other side, or in Stranger Things words, the upside down. And worth noting here, this is our game over screen. And worth noting here is that one handprint that appears on his chest. Remember what I said about the handprints? Yes, this is what happens as a game mechanic every time you die. You gain more and more handprints. So, in the end, depending on the kind of Sam you are, stealthy or aggressive, you die a lot or you die very little, by the end game, you could very well have an entire torso full of hands, or maybe not even the one. This creature with a long body and many tentacles and whatnot that is barely seen on the surface of the water. Let's put a pin in him. And as we can see here, the black strands that go from the surface of the water down to where each body can be. Maybe you can't see many bodies, but you can see these two strands going straight to Sam's body are an indication of how Sam and others are stranded on the other side. We go into the esophagus where what awaits us is the baby, the bridge baby. And this image right here, seen in the next two trailers, is very symbolic by now. It's very iconic. That's the word I'm looking for, iconic. Because only Kojima could make a baby inside a man's esophagus iconic. And this is yet another sort of indicator that Sam and his bridge baby are really connected. Whether it's through this crazy symbolism of being inside the esophagus, or maybe even that C-section.
Once there was an explosion. A bang which gave rise to life as we know it. And then came the next explosion.
The Death Stranding, or what gave way to the Death Stranding. Worth noting here again, just a small pin here. Goodness, so many pins on this blackboard already. All the strands. All people who are stranded on the other side. All people who are either dead but alive, or who have already passed. They indicate something that I need to come back to with the last trailer. And that's it for this trailer as well. I'll again come back to this one, take snippets from it when I need to go back to the pins I made. And here's what I have to say. I'm sorry if I'm going a little fast, or if I'm not really analyzing every little detail like I said I would. Turns out that during the inception of this video, I realized that I don't want to focus on every little detail. I don't want to analyze every little color, every little pixel, because there's no point to that. You know, we know that they live in a futuristic world. We know that they have weird technology. We see a lot of the things. Not everything needs to be pointed out. I merely want to show you the connections between what we see and what will or what should eventually be in terms of, like I said, the story and the gameplay. This entire trailer, one giant pin. Oh, there is so much to talk about here that it's not even funny. How this one directly correlates to the release date trailer, and just when I start connecting the dots, you will see just how much everything was connected from the start. We just didn't know it.
Sam Porter preaches. The man who delivers. Tears. A chiral allergy. So, you have dooms, like me. What's your level?
I've got the extinction factor, but I think you got me beat.
You can see them, right?
No, but I can sense them.
Wanna come work for me? Must be tough out here on your own.
I can't help you with that. I make deliveries. That's all.
A silent, faulty feeling. A silent fault. A silent, faulty feeling. A silent fault. I sigh and fall to the ceiling. I sigh and run to the kneeling. Asylums for the feeling. Ran out of all the meaning. I ran out of. It's hard to fall believing. It's hard to fall. So many men are losing while out there doing the proving. It's no surprise he's doing.
This is the first of many messages which I want to draw some attention to because they are directly related to, again, the concept of forming connections. The strand, the rope that Kojima so wants to empower us with. And it's one of many messages that are strewn throughout both this trailer and the last one that, if you tie them all together, it sort of paints a picture as well. Here we have our first look at Fragile, as she is now known. And something I want to point out that I didn't ever see anyone else point out, her suit. Whatever is embedded into that smart suit, if you want to call it that, it spikes up in the presence of the beats things, just like a blowfish trying to defend itself. And it looks to be made of the same black goop, the same black watery material from which the other side is, abundant of. How this plays into the actual story, I don't know, but I thought I'd point it out because no one else I saw did. And it's just a crazy sort of thing to have. A good defense system, by the way, but it's still weird. Again, here it is very, very, very hard to see, but if I adjust the image, you can make out the 5 figures floating above them. I'm working under the theory that they are not related, or not exactly related, to the creatures that attack them, to the beach things. These seem more like a higher power sort of creatures, like the ancient gods, or something like that, so to speak.
Headed into town.
Second message in the trailer, give me your hand in death. Before it was in life, now it is in death. You have a connection between 2 parallels, 2 extremes, and we're starting to hone in on the core theme, or the main message that Death Stranding will want to convey, or around which everything is built. Another thing to mention here, very small, not an actual pin, not even, because there's no relevance, or none yet that I can see, to the actual gameplay or story, but her umbrella, it's freaking awesome, and again, I don't think anyone ever really mentioned it, but it's really freaking cool.
Watch yourself. Those things never stay gone for long. The time fall fast forwards whatever it touches. But it can't wash everything away. The past just won't let go. I'll see you around. Porter Bridges.
And here's where I pause to take back what I said before, because I'm actually analyzing this as I record, as I go along. Her black suit, those spikes, I thought they were in a response to the creatures around her, but it could be sort of her own defense mechanism, like when she's angry or excited or something, they spark up, because the creatures are gone here, but the spikes still activate here. Just a small thing, really.
Sam. What's your status? Chiralium density is still increasing.
My status is fucked. There's tons of them.
Can you sit out the rain?
No, they're closing in on my position. I have to move before they realize I'm in here.
Sam, if one of those things eats you, it'll trigger a void out. You'll come back, sure, but the surrounding area will still be a crater.
I got an idea.
This is our very first glance at what should be the beached things. Not all of them, mind you. I think it's just one entity controlling them all through the black strands. This is what they look like. This is what chases you in the game. This is what drags you into the other side. This is what kills you. The beached things.
A crypto bite a day keeps the time fall away.
A crypto biote, according to her. Otherwise known as water bears, or at least the very miniature real-life version of these little guys she's about to stick in her mouth. They probably play a part in the gameplay as well, but albeit a smaller part because they are present in the underwater other side in the previous trailer. Again, when Sam wakes up, that he sort of coughs them up, and now here where she takes a bite out of one of them. So whether or not that has anything to do with anything at all, who knows? Who knows if we'll even get to eat them at all, but for now, what we can say is that they seem to have some role to play in the game. Who knows? Maybe what they actually do is protect you from the timefall, maybe as a sort of temporary potion or healing item, in that sort of sense.
You're too late. You still don't know who I am, do you?
Who are you?
And here we have Lindsay Wagner's character, the infamous Amelie, who I'll also get to as we're pinning her here for when we get to the last trailer, of course. But one thing to note here, or there's a few things to note. It's what she says, again, for the pin, but the real thing to note here is a lot of people focused on the necklace, trying to convey some sort of meaning from it. I am not here to tell you what that necklace means. Many have tried to decipher it, none have actually found an answer to it. But what I will say is that the necklace also requires a pin in it, because, as I'm going to explain very soon, all these elements come together to form one single idea. And that's enough for this trailer. Now, before I actually get onto the last one, we're finally going to dive into the second trailer, because that will allow me to finally get through the explanations in a single go. I'm going to pause that last video the most of all, but you'll see it'll be pretty much worth it, or so I hope. Oh, and one final pause before I go. Give me your hand in spirit. First it was life, then it was death, and now in spirit. A transcendence of events. And the message here should play well into the messages displayed later. Now you might be wondering why I left this trailer for this moment instead of putting them in the chronological order that they came out. And it's because the three trailers I just showed all connect in the same way. They all have Sam in it, and they all sort of convey the same ideas, or they sort of segue into each other really well. This next one, however, has no Sam in it, and I had to leave it for this point, for this moment in time, because it segues perfectly into the ideas and theories I have regarding Mads Mikkelsen's character Cliff in the final trailer. Also worth noting is that this video is also one big pin because it references, or rather I'm going to reference it, Now, Mad's appearance here, and this is the only pause I'm going to make as the trailer's actually ending. Mad's appearance here, at a first glance, is imposing. He seems like a threat. He comes armed to the teeth with his 4 soldiers, and he comes out of an alley from which the black goop or the black water also emanated. This is all very important because of a scene that comes in the last trailer, but as this one also ends, I want to just point out something that Kojima said when Mads was revealed. Mads is neither a good nor a bad character. He is morally gray. What that told me was that, okay, so he's not someone who's going to be antagonistic towards you, but he probably won't help you. He's on his own mission then. Okay, so let's see how this ties into the last trailer. Everything here, though, from the soldiers to the black water to the baby doll that Mads steadily pulls towards him, it all matters. And it all matters towards the big theory that I have regarding his character. And now here we are at the last trailer, and don't worry, I'm not forgetting neither the Kojima Productions logo nor the TGS 2018 snippet, but I'll work those into this final segment of the video. Be warned at this one, because this is where I'm going to pause the most just to show you the connections, and again, I'm sorry I didn't really comb through all of the details. I don't know if you were expecting that, but without further ado, let's start. Off the bat, we have the iconic imagery once again, the baby inside the esophagus, and yes, Kojima, you're special, I know, I love you, but I don't want to go diving into a baby's esophagus, that's just wrong. It's also very meta.
Baby.
Okay, first view of Mads in a long time actually, in terms of, you know, the airing of the trailers, and what do we see? He's talking to Bibi, he's talking to the bridge baby as they are known, has blood on his cheeks, and appears to be in some kind of broken down building. This doesn't give us much context as to who he is or what he is, but we know that he too has a strong connection to the baby, and that something really bad just happened, otherwise he wouldn't have blood all over him.
Don't worry. It's okay. I'll always be with you.
His entire dialogue here speaks to me, and it tells me right away that he cares for the baby. Now, I know I just said that, but he really cares. You could even call the baby his son, but we don't know that. It's still part of the clues that we don't have, but that's my theory for now. This is his baby, and that's it.
See the sunset. The day is ending. Let that yawn out. There's no pretending.
Remember at the start of the video when I said that I'd come back to this part, or rather the end of this trailer? I will, but it has to do with this song. And it's because this tune, this little rhythm here, this rhythmic song, it's repeated again at the end, which tells me that there's a bit of a leitmotif going on here. And I love leitmotifs. It really cements the importance of the song and just how great it is. And before this video even keeps going, what I didn't comb through in terms of details for the last few videos, I will in this one, simply because a lot of other people already covered some of those other details in the other videos. And here we see the picture from before, the one from one of the earlier trailers. Sam had it in his hands, and I want to draw your attention to both the lady in the back and the lady with the blurred out face. Why her face is blurred out is beyond me, but my theory is that the lady with the blurred out face is Emily, Lindsay Wagner's character, and that the lady in the back is probably the President of the United States. The lady we see up ahead, who's old and quite frail. And my basis for that theory is that, you know, Sam also looked younger there too, and why else would he be talking to a bedbound President Bridget and have this photograph with him everywhere if there weren't that sort of connection? Even though she does look a lot like Lindsay Wagner, an older Lindsay Wagner, but maybe that's the point. Maybe Lindsay is the lady on the left with her face blurred out because she is the daughter of the president. The way I see it, Lindsay and Norman, Emily, and Sam were at one point together, with Sam's mother-in-law being the president of the US.
Together, you can help us reconnect. You can make America whole.
No, America's finished.
Sam, if we don't all come together again, humanity will not survive.
We don't need a country. Not anymore.
We do. Alone, we have no future.
Bridget, you're the president of jack shit.
And herein lies the plot, so to speak, both as it was described on the official page and as I see it as well. What is the goal of the game? Or rather, what is your goal as the player? You will have to traverse the landscape, the entire open world, delivering packages, and that may sound boring, but the whole point of it isn't to deliver the packages itself, but it's to help people. This is where the concept of the pin that Guillermo del Toro was wearing, and as we can see on the presidential floor over here, is also defined. Bridges. Bridges is the organization, and it belongs to no longer the United States, but the United Cities of America. See, the theory here is that America in this post-apocalyptic future has lost the concept of states. The state lines have blurred in the wake of this catastrophe, in the wake of the Death Stranding, and all that is left are segregated cities. Cities that are so apart, that are not connected, but that need to be connected, because if not, the world will fall to ruin. So your goal will be to go from settlement to settlement, city to city, and help people out. That is the whole point of the game, to inspire hope, to help people, to connect with people, and to connect the cities, as per the web design on the Bridges logo. And Bridges is the name of the organization that is dedicated to connecting the world. The organization you belong to, and the organization that I think is most looking into the Death Stranding, or at least finding a way to fight it. And may I just add that Kojima's choice in music is perfect. This song, even being the version without lyrics, unlike the Japanese version of the trailer, it just fits it so well. And here we see the bike being docked, meaning that, again, Bridges, the organization you belong to, is sort of like Metal Gear Solid's mother base. You go there, you dock your vehicle, you rest, you do the things you need to do between missions or between going out and delivering packages, and part of it is docking your bike. But, and there's a big but here, a little later on in the trailer, I'm gonna pause and look back at some of the others to mention something regarding the bike and just the way this trailer was made as a whole. I want to draw your attention now to this particular line. Because ever since I read it, ever since I saw the trailer, it's been nagging at me because it does not make any sense at all. At first I thought, okay, a new history begins. Is he talking about a new story? As in, okay, another story set in the future? Maybe, yes, but I don't think so. Because if you look at it from the point of view of, the trailer is in perfect English, then this sounds like a bad translation. A new history? What do you mean a new story? Which got me to think, okay, maybe the game is set in an alternate history. Or you have to go back in time. Maybe there's a time travel element in there. I don't know, but the point is, a new history sounds less like a translation error and more like he's trying to tell us that this is an alternate Earth, an alternate timeline, or an alternate reality in which history plays out like this. Another small pause for something that's probably inconsequential, but I also saw it and thought I'd point it out. That K5. What is it? Does anyone know if it's an actual building in real life? Part of something that exists and that was remodeled for this? Or is it something just a game asset? I'm curious. On this snowy mountain, we see the inverted rainbow, which, if you recall, is also in the Mads trailer, the second trailer, and it got me to think, okay, I thought that only appeared in that war-torn zone or in the underwater opposite world kind of thing, but here we see it plainly on the mountain of what should be still planet Earth, which made me sort of have a small theory. Is Sam traversing this mountain on Earth, or is it the other side? And here it is once again. The core plot, as I mentioned before, we have to reconnect a fractured society, a society living in cities instead of one big country. We can use ladders, weapons apparently, and mountain climbing gear, all to traverse the landscape. Reminds me a bit of Breath of the Wild, actually. Okay, let me just pause right here because we finally need to backtrack to more than one video to one of those pins I made before. You remember the golden mask that was on the body, that was smeared on the face? Okay, here's a question. They say diamonds are eternal, but what about gold? There's gold everywhere throughout all the trailers and on every character. We see some on Fragile's bracelet right here. We see some on Sam's Dreamcatcher. If I press play...
It's all to safeguard the continued independence of Edge Knot City.
And you look at the gear that these soldiers are wearing, they're imbued with gold. Up next, we see Higgs, who also has a golden mask, just like in the TGS 2018 trailer, and that all got me to think about what gold means. What's the symbolism of gold in the context of Death Stranding? Why is there so much gold? Simple. And by simple, I mean that a simple Google search actually led me to create this theory or give it more shape. I searched up if gold ages or if gold corrodes, and gold rarely ages or corrodes. The purer it is, being the purest at 24 carats, I think, the less likely it is to tarnish in any sort of way. Other than that, gold does not age, gold does not corrode, gold is a pure element. And that got me to think about the symbolism of what gold means and why everyone wears gold. And what I thought of is, well, if gold cannot die, then that is the perfect antithesis to death. The beach things do not like gold. The other side hates it. They are enraged by the gold, which is why when the golden mask on the mummified corpse became smeared or lost its perfect form, they were able to brush it off and take the corpse anyway. Which is why when Higgs appeared in the TGS 2018 to summon the butthole face lion thing, he did so by taking his golden mask and shoving it into the black liquid. They're drawn towards it, but they hate it. And my theory is that with the gold, Higgs can control the beach things, because otherwise they wouldn't actually hurt you. They'd seek out life, but they wouldn't actively hunt you down like we saw in TGS 2018 or in the Japanese version of this trailer.
They want the UCA to leave him be.
Who are these assholes again?
Homo demons.
That's homo demons, not homo demons. Get it right, people. And put in very simple terms, homo demons is just another word for earthling or mortal. Humans. People from Earth. Which, in the context of Death Stranding, makes sense, considering we're dealing with the other side. There are creatures from the other side, and then there are homo demons. In this case, I guess the terrorist organization refers to themselves as Earthlings, but we still need to see how that plays into the entire story. For now, that's just the meaning.
Militant separatist group.
And speaking of Higgs, let's go back to that TGS 2018 trailer to compare what he did there to what he did here. Now, Higgs is a strange one. I don't know where he got his powers from, but it's obvious that he has several abilities. The first is matter manipulation. He can basically create electricity or lightning, with which he can summon timefall, and he can imbue his mask with, I'm guessing, energy, simply put, which is what he uses to attract the beats things to it to control them. That's the working theory anyway. He has the power to control the beats things, he has the power to bring on timefall, and as the voice here explains, he is part of a terrorist group that can artificially create voidouts. What are voidouts? Voidouts are what was mentioned in the previous trailer, but also they are, let's go back to that one scene, that's right, the closing of the hands. When death meets life, explosions occur. And this is another integral part of the story. Voidouts are terrible happenings when you mix both sides, because they should never be mixed, and the result is just dents on the earth. The reason why these guys are artificially creating voidouts are, well, they're freaking terrorists. What their purpose is, I don't even know, but Higgs and his entourage are the ones who have me most intrigued. You know, besides Mads.
I've heard of them. Bunch of terrorists who go around towns killing people and leaving craters.
Right. Nothing's off limits for them. Not even engineering voidouts.
Oh yeah, and he can teleport.
They're extremists like the demons everywhere.
And despite how seemingly creepy it seems, what he does next is lick Leia's face, except it's not really creepy if you think about it, because I think he's actually licking one of those tears off her face. And speaking of the tears, I will get to them when the entire cast rolls in later on in this trailer, because that's where we need to also go back to one of those other pins.
Plotting in the shadows.
Okay, next message we need to focus on: those who resist the future. Now, because everything Kojima does has some sort of meaning to it, I believe that the ones that resist the future are either the terrorists or just everyone in general. No one wants to embrace a future that is devoured by death, if you will. Okay, let me pause here to now go back again and show you what I believe is a timeline of this entire part of the game, because I think this is either going to be one of, if not the very first mission that Sam has to go on. If you'll see in the other trailer, Sam approaches an encampment from the cliff. That's the same encampment we see here. Now we know what the mission was. He was to sneak in and retrieve this package and then leave with it. What the package is, I don't know. Who knows? No one knows. No one cares. Maybe the package is only to help someone else, some sort of side mission. But the point is, that seems like the first mission. He goes in, grabs the package, gets out. He gets chased by these guys who have the power to track him, or rather the package, much like how one tracks Amazon packages, and they give chase. Part of the gameplay can be seen here as we see Sam fights. He's not some defenseless delivery man, and he gets away on his bike. The bike is very important. Why is the bike important? Well, it goes back to that other pin we put back there, and it also helps paint a timeline of how he got here. Because we have two possibilities. Yes, the bike seems to be our main mode of transport, but we can also lose it, as seen here. Now the curious thing is, I'm guessing that losing the bike is sort of like losing a horse in Breath of the Wild. You can always find another horse, or you can always get the parts for another bike, or you can have someone recover your bike, probably. The point is, you can lose your bike, and after that, you would have to go on foot, which is exactly what he does. He gets to the encampment all on his own because he lost the bike. That's one possibility. The other possibility is that he never lost it, he reaches the camp, and he manages to get away with the bike, and then return to base with it because, you know, it's your bike. You need your bike.
Good thing it was raining. Even they know better than to mess with BTs.
I can't spot BTs. Just sense them.
That's why we came prepared.
A bridge baby, huh?
Makes me feel like shit every time.
Well, you are plugging into the other side.
Okay, so remember when I put that first little pin at the first trailer about how the baby goes to the other side? Well, the way he said it here, we're connecting to the other side, makes me think that the babies have a direct connection, or they come from the other side, or something along those lines, because otherwise, why would you plug into a pod with a baby in it? Just to see those things, right? But this sort of goes in line with what many people around the world tend to believe, myself included, and it's that the ones in this world capable of seeing supernatural elements are animals and children. They say that animals can sense spirits around you, and children have been known to see spirits more easily than adults. So I think that plays into it a little bit.
Freaks me out too.
And here we have the next message. As we're about to see, this refers to them, the soldiers in the World War I setting, just as was shown to us in the second trailer, the Matt's trailer. And I think it's very important to understand what this message means, because I think the theme of the game has to do with connections, but also with good and bad connections. And no, I don't mean like good or bad Wi-Fi. I mean good connections like loving connections, and bad connections being abusive ones. Always remembering something bad that happened to you, always reliving that moment, that's a bad connection. And in this case, I think that's what it refers to. That's why the World War I setting is what it is. It's not a view of hell, and it could be the other side, but more than that, it seems to be like the memories of all the soldiers. Because here's what the main theme of the game is. If the theme is connections, then the extremes we deal with are the extremes we've seen so far. Life and death, or if we're talking opposites, birth and death. Light and dark. The dark being the black water, the light being just the normal world. Hope and despair. And if we take it a step further, peace and war. The serenity and the general, even if it's uneasy, the calmness of our side contrasts against the gritty, dark, war-torn side that is the other side. The one where all the soldiers are, the ones that they stayed connected to that past that they could never let go of. And the next message here is those bound to Hades. As if confirming what I just said, Hades is otherwise known as the underworld, otherwise known as hell, and in some circles I think it's even known as purgatory. All leading to the fact that those bound to Hades are the ones that could not forget that connection to their past, which is why they're stuck in an eternal World War I. And this is where I feel the need to point out something that I've seen no one else point out. Sure, the internet may be in love with the baby's derpy little face in this frame, but let's be honest, did no one notice the baby blow up that thing in front of the tank right before it passed? I'm telling you, this baby's a killer. And here we have a recurring theme that was just mentioned 2 messages ago. If before it was those who are connected to the past, now it's those who cannot break the connection. And immediately after this, we are presented with a vision of Mads emerging from the black water with his soldiers. I'm guessing that's the moment when he arrives in the World War I setting, and where he later goes to hunt down Guillermo. But it's interesting that it's him that it's shown after the message, because it tells us more about him as a character. He can't break the connection, but why? Why him specifically? And here's where my next theory comes in. It's that he lost the baby, or someone or something took the baby from him, and so he is not a bad person. He is simply looking for a way to get the baby back, which is why he's shown often surrounded by dolls of babies, fake babies. He's just trying to find the real one. He's just trying to find his own baby, and he's trying to hunt them down no matter what. But the point here is that he's not good and he's not bad. He's not doing this out of evil, and we know that he's not doing this in a good way. He's just doing this in a selfish way, which makes him really interesting. He's probably going to get in your way, but he'll never really get in your way, if you know what I mean. And there we saw for a very brief moment Mads sporting a similar scar to the one Sam sported in the very first trailer. Again, sort of going in line with the theory that the baby comes from them, that it's sort of like a piece of their soul, if you will. Though maybe that's too meta or too abstract, but I think that has something to do very specifically with the baby, which is why Sam was so sad when they took his baby in the first trailer, and why Mads is so intent on getting his baby back. As for the black water that appears wherever he is, I think that's just his method of transportation. You know, like if Higgs can teleport, well, this guy can just zipline through water and just pop out wherever he wants. I don't think he has the power to do it, but maybe he has a means to do it. Here we have the next message, those who struggle to stay connected. Now, this one is tricky because it could refer to basically anyone, but in the context that we're given here, I think it refers to Mads again, because he is the one who's shown directly after this. And what I think it refers to is that while everyone can sort of stay connected to the good part of themselves or to some good thing they like, he's struggling because they took his baby, or he's struggling to stay sane or stay hopeful in a world that is increasingly despairing. And just the same, it could be applied to any of the characters. They're struggling to stay connected, but they'll keep trying because that's the whole point of the game, connections. Though a lot was just shown to us, I feel I need to stop right here specifically because I think this is the same body that we see Sam carrying around in more than one of the sequences in the trailers, but I think it's especially the one that they were carrying that had the golden mask on it. in the third trailer. I'm particularly fond of this scene because the music really complements it, but also because it got me thinking about the characters. The more I watched the trailer, the more I realized, well, it sort of seems like every character has lost something. And this goes in line with their names as well, but when we get to the credit roll of the cast, I'll touch upon that. But for now, let's focus on this scene. This guy clearly is regretting something. He's being dragged away from all these people who are clearly dead, and it seems like he regrets not being able to save them, or maybe they were all his colleagues who passed away, or something like that. Point is, he's trying to help the world so that this does not keep happening. Okay, now we go into the credits sequence, and I'm gonna stop here more than once because, oh boy, the theories are really plain to see, but oh, they are abound. And we start with Sam. Curious thing to note is that everyone in this world only goes by their first name. Whatever last name they seem to have is reflective of their title or their position and the place they belong to. So Sam is just Sam, but he's Sam Porter Bridges. He's a porter, that is to say a transporter, and he works for Bridges. So, Sam Porter Bridges. Now, because I believe that Kojima chose every name for every character specifically based on some trait of theirs, except for Sam, I haven't quite figured out what the point of Sam's name is, let me draw your attention to Cliff. Mads Mikkelsen's character, easily the most interesting character for me. Now, Cliff is a pretty normal name, right? Except when I read it, I thought, well, okay, yes, it's normal, but what a peculiar name to give him. Because a cliff is also a place from which, people hang, or they fall over, cliffhangers and all that. So it got me thinking, well, considering the nature of Matt's character, morally gray, on a hunt for his baby and whatnot, just trying to do things right, even if he has to do the wrong thing to do it, I think that name perfectly reflects his character. He's sort of hanging on a cliff, or standing on a cliff, deciding whether to jump or not, or to just go back and not do a thing. It's also worth noting that in the alternate version of this trailer, the other song that Kojima used from Low Roar as well, it's worth noting because the lyrics here also sort of represent what Mads' character is about, especially the last part of the lyrics, which is coincidentally where he appears in the video. And the lyrics go, "I want to feel something again memorable." This immediately let me know, along with everything else that I've speculated about him, that he has lost something very important to him and he wants to get it back. He wants to feel normal again. He wants to feel human again. And the only way he can do that is by accomplishing his mission. With a name like Fragile, and the way she generally behaves, or from what we've seen, her attitude and her body language, it conveys the feeling that she hides her feelings because she's sort of like something made of glass. She's fragile. She's well composed, but something tells me that the moment she breaks, all hell will break loose. Maybe not literally, but she'll really let those emotions flow, and that's disregarding the tears in her eyes. Now, Mama is pretty self-explanatory, actually. If you look at the way things were presented in this trailer already, you can see that her name perfectly represents what she is, or rather was, and what she's trying to accomplish based on what she lost. If we see here, she clearly lost her baby in an accident. The black strand signifies death. Her baby's silhouette is also black, meaning that it's crossing over to the other side. In this next frame, we see her convening with what looks to be some sort of spirit or apparition from the other side, but this time it's white, probably signifying that it's coming back to life. And in the next frame, we see her receiving that baby that white strand of a baby that you can already tell that it's the same baby she lost. In other words, clear as day, Mama is a character who lost her baby and just wants to get it back. Geez, it seems like everyone wants their baby in this thing. And before I continue, let me just bring up that one scene of her receiving the baby. Because we see some supernatural phenomena, the lights blinking, as is common in most movies, and this is because there's a theory that spirits are sort of like plasma, and plasma interacts with electricity, which affects circuits and whatnot, and lights. But it's worth mentioning because it's not the only instance of supernatural cognition, if you will, that we find. There's the lights here, but there's also Sam's breath in this scene, as well as the goosebumps he receives. And no, those are not the chiral allergies. Chiral allergies after the credits roll, or rather after we get to Amelie, is what I want to talk about next. Okay, next we have Deadman, Guillermo del Toro's character, and this guy's also worth mentioning because even if he's only a supporting character, he's got a very blunt name. It's very in your face, Deadman. And if every other name sort of means something, then this has to mean something too. And what does this mean to me? He's actually dead. He crossed over from the other side. This is sort of evident by what we see next, which is his image, but he looks kind of dead inside. He's got these dead fish eyes, a huge scar across his forehead, and this is very different from the image we first got of him in the second trailer, where he seemed more alive, more scared. Thus, it leads me to the theory that he comes from the other side, a revived man, sort of a zombie, and he's just a dead man. Next we have Hartman, which, again, his name sort of implies that he's a man who feels a lot. He's very sad because humanity's dying. And this is the same guy that was dragged away before, so it makes total sense that he's stricken by grief by all that's happening, and he just wants to save humanity, man. He's the most noble one here. He's followed up by Die Hard Man, who's played by Tommy Earl Jenkins, and I think that's the same guy who was talking about the homo demons before. In other words, he is Bridges' big boss. He is the boss of Bridges. He is your boss in the game, and again, if we analyze his name, Die Hard Man, we can already get the glimpse that he's a man who's hard to kill. Something Die Hard is something that you cannot kill easily. So I think that implies that he has survived more than he needs to, but it's part of his mission, I guess. Also, the Luden's mask on him implies so much about that Kojima Productions logo video that it's not even funny. Next we have Higgs, my second favorite character. Troy, I love you, man. Higgs is a chaotic character and someone whom I've already sort of explained his powers. I don't know what he wants, but he definitely has a goal in mind. Worth noting is that Higgs is the name of the God particle, meaning that it makes total sense that he can pretty much do anything. And let me draw your attention to the next frame. He has black tears instead of the translucent white tears that we see on most characters. Now what does that tell me and how does that add into the theories? Very simple. Recall back to the third trailer where Leah mentioned to Sam how he has chiral allergies too.
Tears. Chiral allergy.
Now we have to stop and define what chirality is. Chirality is nothing more than asymmetry. What is asymmetry? Simple. It's something that when you hold it up to a mirror, it seems symmetrical, but if you superpose it one on top of each other, they don't match up entirely well. The perfect example for this are the human hands. Together they seem, oh yes, they're symmetrical, but if you put one on top of the other, they're not symmetrical at all, so they're chiral. How do you apply this to the context of Death Stranding? Simple. There are two sides. There's our side and there's the other side. Chiral allergies, as I interpret them, are the tears. Tears produced when you're in the presence of the allergen, in this case, the BTs. Everyone gets them because that's just the reaction the human body has to death. Enter Higgs now in his black tears, and I get the feeling that chiral allergies go both ways. Otherwise they wouldn't be chiral. His allergies are the opposite. He gets allergic to life, which is why he has black tears streaming down his face. That's the explanation that most makes sense to me regarding chiral allergies, and his tears anyway. Now see, Amelie's name doesn't really mean anything to me. Then again, I didn't really look it up. If you did, please let me know. But worth noting here is that she has red tears. Shocker, I know. What is this? Red, white, black? Ah, but you see, if chiral allergies are white tears or black tears, then the red tears are nothing. That's right, they don't mean anything in regards to that context. They instead mean something else entirely. To those of you that played Metal Gear Solid 3, I think you'll remember the character The Sorrow. He also bled from his eyes, and he was dead. This led me directly to relate to the fact that Amelie is dead. This is why she appears so often as a spectral memory in front of Sam in different dresses, and why she's bleeding from her eyes right here. She's not alive. She's just an apparition. This is further evidenced by the fact that right after the credit scene, right here, we get a message from Die Hard Man telling Sam to continue Amelie's mission where she left off. You don't say that about someone unless they're already dead. And before I keep going, I must not forget to include the snippet from the Japanese version that includes a bit of extra scenes, such as these that come right after the credit roll, and immediately we can see the pins we mentioned before, such as the hands, or rather the mouth on the giant creature that caused the void out, only in this case, they look like plants sprouting up from the ground, covered in gold. What exactly that means or how that relates to the general theories I haven't quite made a connection, but there's also the fact that if we look at this other frame, we see that this is the same creature that we pinned before in the third trailer. And if you look closely at it, this time it's covered in gold. This goes in line with the theory that Troy is controlling it, or at the very least that the gold has made it enraged, which is why this sort of boss battle thing appears in the first place. And finally, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the slight theory that, as obvious as it may have been throughout the entire trailer, that Troy really wants something to do with Amelie. Both of these characters have some kind of interaction, and I'm guessing that whatever Amelie did, it's very central to Higgs's goal.
Sam, we want you to go west and finish what Amelie started.
Rebuilding America isn't gonna get rid of the BTs. As long as they're still around, there's no escaping it.
But at least we'll have hope.
And here we have it, folks. Your purpose for Death Stranding. Head west, finish what Amelie started. What did she start? I don't know, but part of me has a theory that she was involved in some kind of experiment to probably rid the world of the Death Stranding. It backfired, she died, and so set in motion the events of the game. The way the president says it here, but at least we'll have hope, contrasted against the fact that he's about to shoot his brains out, further indicates the message behind the game. We need to connect the cities, we need to connect ourselves, in order to be hopeful, to remain hopeful, to strive towards a better future. And at the same time, this sort of scenario where he points the gun at himself seems to be indicative of maybe a point where he's got too many hand marks on his body. Maybe he's lost all hope. Maybe the fake baby is inside him instead of the real baby, and the baby represents real hope, whereas the fake baby, fake hope, or something like that. And maybe there's branching scenarios like this one. Maybe this will never happen if you do things right, if you're very hopeful and whatnot.
You see, I've come to understand the truth of the Death Stranding.
And so we're back here, and I gotta say, this is my favorite line in the entire trailer. Troy delivers it perfectly, and it just got me thinking once I heard that line.
Oh, it's so hard to form connections when you can't shake hands. Fortunately, I've got a good connection to the other side.
And speaking of the other side, one thing I forgot to mention all this time is that the handprints are the exact opposite of the footprints, right? We walk with our feet, maybe they walk on their hands because they are literally on the other side, looking down or up at us or however you want to see it. The point is that if the other side is the upside down to ours, then of course they'd be walking on their hands. And I think that's pretty cool.
Covering the world in cable didn't bring an end to war and suffering.
As we approach the end of the trailer and the end of my analysis, let me bring your attention to this one line. Covering the world in cable didn't bring an end to war and suffering. While at first glance it seems like this is analogous with maybe the internet and how, sure, in today's modern society we are all connected through the internet, but we're actually very more disconnected than ever before, I think it also refers to in-game, because recall back to the second trailer. What was under the water that Mads kept on using to control the soldiers and whatnot? A whole bunch of cables. Maybe that's a reference to that. But regarding the fact that the world isn't so connected now, even with the internet, I think that's what Kojima wanted to do all along. He wants us to connect, even if it's only through the internet, which has basically disconnected us more than ever. He's saddened by that, and so this game is meant to connect us all. Which brings me to the gameplay aspect and what he wants to achieve. Kojima said he wants to create a new genre with this. I'm skeptical about that, but okay. Called Social Strand game. That's fine, that's dandy, and the way he's probably going to implement it, or the way that I think he's going to implement it, is through asynchronous online connection. You don't actually play with others. You're never going to need to play with others, but the fact is everybody can be on the same planet at the same time, and you're going to just help each other out. And you can play without helping anyone, surely, but I think that's going to make the game harder. And the whole point is that, if someone's stuck, they can help each other out without having to go to some forum, or maybe there's a message type system where one player leaves a message for another to find, something like that, It's not going to be continuous online gameplay where you need to be with others, but I think that's what he kind of wants to do, a sort of a mix like that to connect us all in the end, which goes in line with the theme of the game.
Don't act surprised when it all comes apart if you try to do it again.
Humans aren't made for living alone. They're supposed to come together, to help one another. And if we as a people can't do that, if we can't reconnect, that's what we need right now. Not to stand apart, but to come together.
I'll show you the real thing soon. I promise. The whole wide world will be yours to explore. You'll be able to go wherever you want. Even the moon.
Even the moon, you say? Now I know Kojima might just be trolling us, but honestly, given what Kojima Productions logo looks like, Ludens on the moon, Ludens mask, waving a flag, and with a whale in the background, I would not be surprised if that's perfectly canon given this final message. And before I end this, let me rewind a little and show you that leitmotif I was talking about, starting right here.
Even the moon.
See the sunset, the day is ending. Let that yawn out, there's no pretending. And I'm sorry if I'm a terrible singer, but that proves that that song is important. Look at it, it's right there, the melody, I love it. And that's it, analysis over. Maybe I didn't comb through it all like I said I would. Maybe I didn't need to, because I think I got the point across. To conclude, to reiterate, and just to get the point across one more time, what will the story of Death Stranding be? Very simple. The story of Death Stranding is about a supernatural event that fuses the land of the living with the land of the dead. Our world and their world. You play as Sam, a person who is in charge of connecting the cities of America to save the world, or America, from extinction. You do that by fostering hope, by creating connections. All the while fending off the evil creatures on the other side and the timefall and whatever else Kojima has planned for us. We do this because Amelie failed in whatever she wanted to do, maybe some kind of experiment. Matt, on the other hand, just wants his baby back. That's what it seems like anyway. And the gameplay is going to be interesting because there's going to be analogous online multiplayer. You can play online, you don't have to. Playing online will help you. You'll be with others. At the same time, there's going to be elements of stealth, some action elements, and a whole lot of sci-fi, which makes it really nice. Hopefully, I got my point across with this. Hopefully, people now understand what it's about and kind of why I'm so excited for it, because it's just so beautiful. It's so needlessly complex. And the thing is, and the thing about Death Stranding is that people really, they say it seems so weird and bizarre and new, but the truth is that Kojima just grabbed a whole lot of concepts that are great and blended them together into something that seems new, seems bizarre, but when you stop and analyze it all, well, it seems very easy to understand, at least for me. Now, if I missed anything, please let me know in the comments below. I'm sure I did. I'm sure I forgot to mention something. Again, I didn't really comb through it all, but I got the point across. All that being said, thank you so much for watching my extensive analysis. This took way long to do. If you liked it, thumb wrestle with that like button down below. Comment, subscribe. You know, hit that bell button for those sweet notifications. It really does help me out, and it helps you out. But as always, I'm the only me, so you be the only you. See you next time, and remember, tomorrow is in your hands.